them were memorials to police officers. They were memorials and monuments of all kinds, mostly in the United States, but also in India, Colombia, South Africa, and the UK. In the United States, most were memorials that had stood quietly in local parks and on the grounds of government buildings for at least a century, and most were memorials to Confederate soldiers or Christopher Columbus. They had stood mute, but it seemed to become clear, quite suddenly, that they had been doing the serious cultural work of maintaining racial hierarchies. The protesters tore them down in an effort to reject these everyday affirmations of profound inequities. And while there is plenty of room for subtlety and nuance in understanding and representing even the most fraught heritage, most cultural infrastructure is like the Davis chair, not made for the expression of subtlety or nuance. Like the White Lies Matter folks, the protesters pulling down monuments were refusing to tolerate lies embedded in the landscape. They were right that these monuments are an important part of the cultural infrastructure, a system of meaning-making that enabled a brutal murder, which took more than 9 minutes and was witnessed by as many as 1 billion people, to be committed by one police officer in front of 3 others. But these monuments and the thousands that still stand across the United States are only one part of the cultural infrastructure, the blunt instruments that work to maintain basic untruths about race. For instance, that white people are better, more worthy, matter more than black and brown people. Blunt Instruments is a field guide of sorts to racist cultural infrastructure in the United States. It is intended to be a tool to help readers identify, contextualize, and name elements of our everyday landscapes and cultural practices that are designed to seem benign or natural, but that, in fact, work tirelessly to tell vital stories about who we are, how we came to be, and who belongs. These are stories about who has power in the culture and who doesn't. They are also almost always stories about race. Blunt Instruments looks at 3 categories of cultural infrastructure: memorials, museums, and everyday patriotic practices. Each of these has been very much in the news for most of the 21st century. In fact, more intense, riotous, fraught attention has been paid to them in the last 20 years than in most of the first 200 years of American life. And yet they are seldom looked at together or understood explicitly as tools used by particular people in particular times and places to shape the culture in particular ways. This book responds to this gap. Understanding what cultural infrastructure is and the deep and broad impact that it has is crucial to understanding how structures of inequity are maintained and how they might be dismantled. This book is shaped by a few basic observations. The first is that it takes a tremendous amount of work to make fictional ideas about race seem natural. For instance, the bold, insistent assertion that Confederate soldiers gave their lives to preserve an innocent, race-neutral American heritage. The second is that cultural infrastructures are powerful tools. The same people who describe monuments as benign or neutral will go to extraordinary lengths to prevent their removal. The third is that all infrastructure is cultural. It is always shaped by the values of the culture. The fourth observation builds on these. It is that we are surrounded by cultural objects that don't necessarily seem to have anything to do with culture or values or ideology, like a science museum, but that work every day to tell us who we are, and crucially, that much of this telling in the obviously cultural infrastructure and the less obviously cultural infrastructure has been about racial hierarchies and has been effective in maintaining structures of inequity. This short book does not try to be a comprehensive guide to all cultural infrastructure or to engage with every contemporary debate. Instead, it offers a brief history of 3 forms of cultural infrastructure: memorials, museums, and everyday patriotic practices, and close readings of a few particularly important examples of each to make it easy for readers to understand the cultural infrastructure they encounter in their daily lives. Starting with Colin Kaepernick. It began in the preseason and was initially such a modest gesture that it went largely unnoticed. San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick was not in uniform for the first game the team played. He was sitting on the bench, and when the national anthem was played on August 14, 2016,